unlisted, at least until after the retreat, and I have some time to spruce them up a little bit and make them public. But for now, they are unlisted. All right. So we are unlisted live. We are all set. Okay, let's begin. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to the worthy one, the sublime one, the fully awakened one. Okay, so we begin now with our first talk. And the way I'm going to cover these 10 perceptions is not in the order listed. I've kind of grouped them into, each talk is going to have a grouping of them together that are similar, or at least connected in some way. So we are going to start, though, with the first one, because in many ways, it's probably the most important perception. In many ways, all of the other perceptions kind of flow naturally from this perception. So it's not a surprise that we would have, this as a major focus to start off with. And this is the perception of impermanence, or the perception of anicca sanya. Sanya, we went over yesterday, is perception, perceiving, conceiving, etc. So let's read. If you want to follow along, you can do it in the Maggasekha chanting book, or you can just listen. Doesn't matter. It's only one paragraph. We're not going through a lot. And what Ananda is the perception of impermanence. Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu who has gone to the forest, or to the foot of a tree, or to an empty abode, considers thus. So for those of you who are familiar somewhat with the suttas, you may hear this thing as a preamble for meditation, right? They go to a forest or the foot of a tree or an abandoned hut, and then they sit down cross-legged and follow their breath, which is also one of the 10 perceptions we're going to go over later. But the Buddha uses this not just for what we consider quote-unquote meditation. So we'll continue here. And considers thus. What is this word, the Pali word for consider? The Pali word is patisanchikkati, and this means to reflect, to consider, to discern. So what we have here in these 10 perceptions is not a meditate. It's a meditation in the actual real traditional understanding of the English word meditation, which is kind of like to contemplate, to ponder, to reflect on. Right? So to really understand impermanence is actually to see it in a deep experiential way. So there's two different things here. But when we're talking about the perception, we're talking about setting the groundwork, setting the right mindset, the right attitude, the right kind of preamble to being able to see impermanence in that deep experiential way. Right? So this they go to this secluded place and they reflect thus. Form is impermanent, sensations are impermanent, perception is impermanent, mental formations are impermanent, consciousness is impermanent. Thus he dwells reflecting on the impermanence in these 5 aggregates of grasping. This Ananda is said to be the perception of impermanence. So what are the five aggregates? If you've never heard this term five aggregates before, they can literally be their own retreat. There's a lot to be said. But for the purpose of this, the Buddha uses the five aggregates to explain all the totality of this mind and body, right? This psychophysical organism, as they would say. The Buddha would say, and we're actually, the last part of this talk, we're going to talk about anatta, not self, because that is one of the perceptions as well. But the Buddha would say that, well, I just went blank. Where was I? Let's see. I think I'm going to have to come back to it. But understanding what is impermanent is very important, because we don't actually want to, we naturally try to avoid thinking about anything that's impermanent. We don't like to think about growing old. We don't like to think about death. We don't like to think about separation. So actually, our kind of normal MO is that we do not want to think about these things. Thank you, Didi. The aggregates, yes. So as a quick shorthand, what the Buddha is saying here, in terms of anchoring the perception in the five aggregates, is the Buddha is telling us to reflect on everything about this mind and body, and reflecting on that it is impermanent. There's not a reflection on, well, the moon is, eventually the sun will eventually die, and then the planet will die, and all these things. That is a kind of a reflection. But what the Buddha is always focused on is your experience here, this mind and body. So the perception of impermanence is reflecting, oh, this body has changed. This mind has changed. Feeling has changed. These things are impermanent. And so I think to help with this perception, I have to explain a little bit about anicca. So we're using the word impermanent, and that's because that's just what is normally used. It's very common. It's kind of overdone, to be honest with you. It's overdone to the point where it kind of loses its meaning. Anicca is something a bit more deep than what we think of when we think of impermanence. When you look up the word, actually, you can see the various, as I spoke about yesterday when we went over Pali words, there's oftentimes multiple different definitions depending on context and depending on a variety of factors, that when you understand those different definitions, although they're often synonyms and connected, it helps you to have a greater understanding of what the Buddha is talking about. And I remember years ago when I looked up anicca, and I saw, yeah, impermanence is there, but also instability and undependability. And this was actually, just looking up the definition was actually a very profound experience for me, because it gave me an instant perception shift. Because I was like, yeah, I need impermanence, nothing's permanent, everything's changing, blah, 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 blah. But years of practice and years of sutta reading kind of culminated in an insight, looking at these different definitions to understand anicca in a deeper way. The Buddha tells us, sabbe sankhara anicca. All conditioned things are impermanent, unstable, and undependable. And when the Buddha says conditioned things, this is literally everything except for awakening itself, except for a final extinguishment. So you, right now, in your life, every single thing you will experience, from the minute to the massive, is anicca. It is all unstable. It is all undependable. Your relationships, your career, your car, your items, everything is unstable. Everything is undependable. There's not one thing that is within this conditioned existence. And I remember that when that kind of rolled over me, and I had this vision, like I was in a shipwreck at sea, and I was trying to grasp onto flotsam, like some floating debris. And every time I tried to push myself up out of the water, it would break and I would fall back into the water. And I kept trying to find some kind of refuge, some kind of security, some kind of stability that would keep me up. And I couldn't. And I realized, oh, this is what the Buddha is talking about when he says there's no safety, there's no security in the samsaric state. The only security is awakening. And so when you take that understanding of what the Buddha is talking about, is literally everything is unstable, undependable. It is subject to change. Now, apply that, reflect on that in terms of this mind and body. This body, subject to change. This body will grow old, will get sick, will die. This mind will also change. As the body grows older, the brain is a little also affected. So you start to forget things more, etc. Everything about this mind and body is unstable, undependable, and subject to change. That's what this reflection is. Whatever you think you are is also impermanent, unstable, undependable. This is where the Buddhist concept of soullessness, right? There's no permanent essence. There's no kind of permanent soul or self that is me. That's where this comes in, right? And so the reflection that the Buddha gives, and what is the perception of the absence of self? Here in Ananda, a bhikkhu who has gone to the forest or to the foot of a tree or to an empty abode, again, there's that kind of secluding yourself a little bit physically, and then they reflect. I is devoid of any permanent soul or essence or self. Form is devoid of self. Ear is devoid of self. Sounds are devoid of self. Nose is devoid of self. Smelling is devoid of self. Tongue is devoid of self. Tastes are devoid of self. Body is devoid of self. Tangibles are devoid of self. Mind is devoid of self. Thoughts are devoid of self. Thus, in these 6 internal and external spheres, he dwells, reflecting on their selflessness, their soullessness. There's no permanent essence in any of these things. This Ananda is said to be the perception of the absence of self. So when we say there's no permanent essence, what do we mean here? This naturally follows from anicca. What did I say? There is nothing within your experience in the conditioned existence that is permanent, stable, and dependable. That even goes down to the deepest levels of what you consider to be me, mine, and myself. Now, we're talking about among the literal deepest Dhamma in Buddhism here. So we are not talking about, in this case of perception, literal insight into the nature of anatta. The Buddha is giving us an exercise, a reflection, a tool to start to maneuver our perception to seeing the truth, to seeing things as they are. This is the preliminary thing, to practice this perception, to changing your perception, changing how you see things. So you can then see them with your deep experiential wisdom and insight eventually. That's what's being said here. So yeah, when you reflect, and we're going to be doing this in the guided meditation soon, you know, like, oh, there's no permanent essence in the I, no permanent essence in the external forms. All right, when you do this reflection, you're not assuming or expecting that you will, with wisdom and insight, experientially know this yet. But you are reinforcing the teaching. And you are actually trying to investigate a little bit, try to floor. You know, oh, what about, okay, where is this? Is the I me? Is the I myself? Is the I mine? You kind of putting that question out there. And then you do that over time. You deepen your practice, your meditation, your investigation over time. And then you actually start to see with your own experience in a deep way, oh, no, actually, it's not. Buddha was right. So it's this process that is allowing you to gradually, slowly, over time, steer your perception to seeing things as they are. Because we normally actually want to perceive things not as they are. We want to perceive things as we wish they would be, or we want them to be. And so it's not easy to just flip on a dime. We have to slowly, gradually acclimate ourselves. You know, it's just like you go to Colorado, you go to the mountains, and you know, you're a flatlander like myself, and you have trouble breathing because the air is not as thick. And so you have to slowly acclimatize yourself to these nature of reality. And so there's a third perception that we're covering today. And this is also very deep. This is also extremely deep. I personally cannot even say that I have experienced this in my own experience, because this is like almost awakened level deep stuff. So if this seems a little off or counterintuitive, it's because it's really deep. So, and what ananda is the perception of impermanence in regard to all mental formations. So this is perceiving impermanence in literally any kind of thought, anything that, any kind of intention, anything that is created within the mind. So here in Ananda, a bhikkhu is worried, ashamed, and disgusted on account of all the mental formations. This Ananda is said to be a perception of non-desire in regard to all the mental formations. So this is not talking about having bad, unskillful thoughts arising in your mind and recognizing that and feeling disgusted about that. Actually, we're going to be covering that in the later talk. This is talking about literal, all conditioned mental experience, seeing it as ashamed, disgusted, and worried about these things. This is very subtle, very complicated, right? And unfortunately, with a lot of these perceptions, there's not a lot of, the Buddha does not go into very deep detail explaining what he's meaning here. You have to kind of connect a lot of dots across a lot of different suttas. And so what the Buddha is essentially talking about here is sankhara dukkha. The Buddha talks about 3 types of suffering: dukkha dukkha, which is physical suffering; viparinama dukkha, which is the dukkha of change, right? We're separated from people, places, and experiences, and we suffer because of that, etc. And then there's sankhara dukkha. Sankhara dukkha is the insight into understanding that existence in itself literally naturally leads to unpleasant experience and suffering. So that's the level that we're dealing with here when we're dealing with the perception of impermanence. This is to help us to detach or not so strongly attach to the things that arise in our mind. Pleasant experience, we have all kinds of fantasies arising in our mind, or we just want to just get lost in them and daydream. And it's much more fun getting involved in these daydreams as opposed to following the breath. Oh, that's so boring. Right? So this is helping us to counteract our natural grasping, our natural desire towards wanting to be wrapped up in our thoughts and wrapped up in daydreams and fantasies and things like this. Now, the Buddha is saying, develop the perception of, actually, no, like counteract that. Instead of being all the way over here, that you're totally enraptured and fascinated by this, push it back a little bit. And we're going to see this concept later when we talk about the body as well. Right? That's what the Buddha is doing. Is the perception is to bring us to a more balanced view of what is arising in the mind. So we're not just totally infatuated by all these pleasant thoughts and being wrapped up in fantasies. No, actually, there's a lot to worry about. So just bring us back to the middle. Don't even be infatuated by the idea of thoughts and intentions and impulses and all that at all. These are just things that are arising. Don't be attached to them. So bring it back. And so this is what the Buddha is talking about here. When we're talking about the perception of impermanence regarding all of these things. These are all unstable, undependable. They're arising, they're ceasing. Don't get attached to them. Don't be infatuated by them. Don't waste time when you should be trying to see things as they are. Don't waste time just getting wrapped up in thought worlds and just daydreaming, and you sit down for a half hour and you spend 20 minutes wrapped up in some fantasy, whether it's a what you call it, the savior fantasy or sexual fantasy or whatever fantasy. You're just wrapped up in it because it's just like a warm blanket, a cocoon that just it's very nice. and then you wasted a half hour, right? So Buddha's saying, no, no, no. Be very worry about these things. And again, that's not to make you anxious and like, oh, because that's actually going too far to the other way. It's just so to help you get out of that kind of infatuated, intoxicated mind state towards a more middle ground, towards to see things as they are, not, you're not supposed to be disgusted with things as they are. Right? We're going to be talking about this. We're talking about the body. Right? So it's not trying to make us like disgusted, because that is also aversion. That is also suffering. We're trying to use this perception to bring ourselves out of this intoxication. That's what we're trying to do here with this perception. And so to close this out, I just want to read a few snippets where the Buddha explains kind of like the benefits of these perceptions. So when the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. It culminates in freedom from death and ends in freedom from death. This also needs a little bit of unpacking. When there is no more craving, no more ignorance, no more suffering, there's no more birth. There's no more old age. There's no more sickness. And because there's no more birth, there's no more death. This is why Nibbana or Nirvana, maybe you've heard that, is called the deathless in the suttas. So basically what this is saying is you develop the perception of impermanence. It will lead to awakening. It will lead to freedom from suffering and freedom from the samsaric state. Mendicants, when the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it eliminates all desire for sensual pleasures. This is that being wrapped up in all that pleasant experience, the fantasies or the physical feelings, etc. For rebirth in the realm of luminous form or rebirth in future life. It eliminates all ignorance and eradicates the conceit, I am. What is the conceit, I am? The view that there is some kind of permanent essence somewhere, right? Okay, maybe I know that my I is not me, but there's some I am. There's some I am somewhere, right? So this is where it goes that deep. And so the simile, in the autumn, the heavens are clear and cloudless. And as the sun is rising to the firmament, having dispelled all darkness of space, it shines, glows, and radiates. In the same way, when the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it eliminates all desire for sensual pleasures, etc. So this this kind of experience of the darkness being eliminated, right? This is very very beautiful simile. All right, and one more. So this is the perception of not self. When the perception of not self in suffering is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. It culminates in freedom from death and ends in freedom from death. We've seen this already, right, with the perception of impermanence. That's what I said, but why did I say it? When a mendicant often meditates with a mind reinforced with the perception of not self and suffering, their mind is rid of I-making, mind-making, and the conceit for this conscious body and all external stimuli. It has gone beyond discrimination and is peaceful and well freed. We're talking about very deep Dhamma here, right? Going beyond creating I, right? What is I making and mind making? This thought has arisen. That is mine. That's me. I own this mouse. This is mine. This is me, right? That's what we're talking about, I making and mind making. And we do that from, probably 3 or 4 months of existence. We're barely barely born, and we start doing that. Right? So that's what we're talking about here. Very, very deep Dhamma. And so we are going to stop for the talk. And I'm going to give just maybe a 2 or 3 minute break to use the restroom. And we'll come back for the meditation. So I'll just be back in a couple minutes. All right. Well, start making your way back. Set your body up in whatever comfortable and stable position works for you. As we continue to do these guided meditations, I will not be doing full guided of, say, the mindful scanning of the body. This is just so that you can start to practice it on your own. So set up your body, a comfortable and stable position. Start by placing your focus in mindfulness on the foot, moving up, paying attention to whatever feeling or sensations arising in that part of the body. Noticing if there are any small feelings of discomfort or imbalance that will lead to pain and later on, adjusting as you need to. paying attention to the knees, the pelvis, and the spine. If you're new to practice somewhat, don't expect too much too soon regarding your posture. It will take time to both understand your body and posture and to train the body to be able to sit in that posture for a while. Remember, ideally, you shouldn't be engaging any part of the body, like trying to force the spine to be straight. You can think about your posture like a house. The hips and pelvis, the knees, the legs, this is like the foundation. If this foundation is not somewhat stable and firm, then the rest of the house will not stand. But if you are able to set your lower body up in a good way, then naturally the spine should just be in its neutral position, its natural curvature, not engaged in any way, just resting on top of the pelvis, like the floors of a house rest on top of the foundation. And then likewise, if the foundation is good, the floors are good, the spine is just resting comfortably, then so too the head would also just be resting, not leaning or slouching here or there. So keep this in mind as you are setting up your posture. If you set up your posture and all of a sudden your spine bends and your head goes down, well, go back down to the pelvis, check the angle. If you're sitting on a meditation cushion, check that the sits bones, the bones of the buttocks, are level and balanced. One is not higher than the other. Move and adjust as much as you need to. Even if you're sitting on a chair or a couch, You don't want to be having too much of your weight on the backrest, especially if this causes bending and compression, which can lead to constriction of breathing or pain later on. You want to try to keep your posture even if you're sitting on a chair. Whenever you feel confident and are done setting up the body posture, remember to take your 3 deep breaths, let the body go, and then start following the breath, trying not to control it or attach to it. Remember to lay down your burdens. You can even visually see yourself in your mind putting your baggage down with all your worries, concerns, responsibilities, placing them down for the time of this meditation. Remember, when you're distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return. Don't get wrapped up in worry or anxiousness about being distracted away. No need to come down on yourself. Do your best to let go of whatever is distracting you. Don't get infatuated and be wrapped up in it. Simply acknowledge, let go, and return. Even if you get distracted away 100 times in a meditation, just acknowledge, let go, and return. Your mind is impermanent. Your focus is impermanent. It doesn't last forever. But you can train the mind to stay with the breath, like training a dog or a little child, training in a skill. Eventually, over time, your mind will want to be with the breath because it sees the benefits, and you'll have less trouble spending more time following the breath to a more calm and tranquil mind. For the rest of this meditation, we'll practice applying the 6 factors to our experience. So as you are following your breath, distraction arises, something that takes you away from the breath. We'll take a minute to focus in on that distraction and say the 6 factors in our mind. So say an itch arises, a pain arises, a strong distracting thought arises. You can repeat these 6 things. You say in your mind, this experience is not me. It's not mine. It's not myself. This experience is impermanent. It is unsatisfactory. And it is not self or soulless. The first 3 are the Buddha's teaching in terms of applying and investigating, trying to find some kind of permanent essence in various things like the body, the mind, etc. And the last 3 are a reflection on the 3 characteristics of existence. Everything is unstable, impermanent. And when you attach to something that's unstable and impermanent, you create suffering. Therefore, it's unsatisfactory. And that all things are not self, no permanent essence. So reflect on whatever is arising and distracting you away with these 6 things. It's not just about repeating the words. You say, this is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. See if you can investigate that. It's like asking yourself a question. See if you can find the answer. Likewise, when you say this is impermanent, well, investigate it. Is it? Is this going to be here forever? Is it changing now, even while it's here? Is this unsatisfactory? Is this without any permanent essence? This is not meant to just be a words like a mantra you just keep repeating. It is meant to be a line of investigation, aligning your perception. So again, whatever arises distracts you away. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is without permanent essence, without soul. Continue practicing in such a way. If you can't remember all 6, that's fine. Just reflect on what you remember. I'll keep repeating it throughout the rest of the meditation. And whatever that distraction is, once it goes away, just return back to the breath. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is soulless. When we reflect on something being unsatisfactory or suffering, the word here is dukkha. We're reflecting on attaching to it. Doesn't have to be unpleasant feeling, a painful experience. It can even be a pleasurable experience. But it's unsatisfactory because we know that it cannot last. It will stop. It will go away. because of our desire and attachment to having the pleasant experiences. When it goes away, it will be unsatisfactory. It will be suffering. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is soulless. Where is the permanent essence in this thing that is arising? For the rest of the meditation, you have another option if you want to take it instead of staying on the breath. If you like, you can expand to a more general awareness and openness of your whole mind and body. And when you do this, usually there will be some kind of experience, whether physical or mental experience, that arises, becomes most prominent in your field of awareness. Whatever that experience is, that is what you apply the six factors to. Does it matter if it's painful, pleasant? Does it matter if you like it or you dislike it? Whatever arises, you can apply the six factors. So you can do that if you wish, or you can continue to stay following the breath and applying the six factors. Applying the six factors is not just something you can only do while sitting in meditation. This is a technique, a practice that can be done during any experience, anywhere, at any time. Is this me? Is this mine? Is this myself? Is this impermanent? Is this unsatisfactory? Is this truly without permanent essence? This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is soulless, without permanent essence. Slowly start to open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you and your body's position in it, reflecting on the state of your mind before and after the meditation, and contemplating any experiences that stood out. All right, friends, so that is the end of the first block. We will now do the guided, mindfulness of eating section before we break. So back at Bhavana days, when I was coordinating the retreats and then teaching at them, it kind of developed that I would give before the first meal on the first day, full day of a retreat, I'd give a little talk, a little kind of instructions on mindfulness of eating. And this kind of developed over time into something a bit more than just the mindfulness of eating, and developed into what I call the simile of the ember. And this kind of is a basic mindfulness primer that I give we um, before I jump into mindfulness of eating. So let's talk about the simile of the ember. What is the typical meditation instructions that most monastics and lay people, lay teachers give? They say, like, meditate a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening. And usually what happens? Usually you wake up and maybe you do your half hour in the morning. In the first 25 minutes, your mind is so full of what you have to do for the day, and you hope things turn out this way and not that way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for the first 25 minutes of your half hour meditation, your mind is just on all of these things. And then maybe it starts to get calm and peaceful. And then ding, the bell rings and you're off to the races for the day. Right? And then after your busy activities of the day, you come back in the evening and you sit again. And the first half hour, for the first 25 minutes is all, I can't believe this person did this, and I can't believe this happened to me, and now I have to do this. And your mind is kind of reacting and reliving all of the activities of the day for the first 25 minutes. And then maybe the last couple of minutes, it comes calm and peaceful. And then the bell rings, and then, you go to sleep, and then wake up and do it all over again. And so I want to talk about the simile of the ember. Our ancestors, and I don't mean like what country your grandparents are from. I mean going back like 80, 100,000 years ago, right? When basically all humans were hunter-gatherers, nomads, moving with the tribes and the seasons, or moving with the herds, the seasons, etc. They developed a system that helped them with fires. So if you've ever done any camping, hiking, or like learning kind of what they call bushcraft, learning survival skills, what you soon quickly find out is actually it's very hard to start a fire. Smokey the Bear, when I was growing up, made it seem like fires just started all over, just very easily. And there's some dangers, but in general, if you're trying to start a fire, especially without gasoline and matches and lighters, it's actually quite hard and quite time consuming. And so our ancestors, 100,000 years ago or so, because they are just as smart as we are now, there's the same people, they figured out, well, why don't we make this easier on ourselves? So they figured out that, you wake up in the morning before moving on to, wherever you're going to end up for the night. You take some barely alive embers from the campfire. You put it in a little bag, a little container, and it has some maybe dried grass and some moss or whatever. And you travel for the day. And then you come to wherever you're going to spend the night. And instead of doing the whole process from scratch of starting a fire, our ancestors figured out you take the ember out and you put it in what in modern times we call a bird's nest. It could literally be a bird's nest, but it could be just like a bunch of like dried grass and things. You can actually see this on YouTube, how they do this. And they put the ember in there and they start blowing. And they do that for a minute, 2 minutes. All of a sudden, whoosh, the flame just comes up. And then they're able to put that into their fire pit, and they have fire for the night. Right? So they were able to save themselves a lot of time by developing this system, this technique. And I say this simile because in this simile, the ember is mindfulness. Instead of starting the fire in the morning and starting the fire in the evening, doing your half-hour meditation in the morning, you get up and it's just no meditation until and then in the evening. This is a common mistake people make. If they think meditation, they think sitting on a cushion. But the Buddhist teaching, the Buddhist practice is, as long as you are awake, you can practice. In any activity you're doing, you can practice. So I remember even as the years rolled on, people would come back and they would say, Bhante, I remember the simile of the ember. I remembered it keep the ember going, take it with me throughout the day. What are they remembering? They're remembering to be mindful throughout the day. So instead of you do your half hour in the morning, you get up, the practice has just begun. Getting ready for work, driving to work, at work, developing mindfulness, being mindful and clearly aware of what you're doing throughout the day. Processing, that helps to process what you're doing throughout the day. And so you get to the end, you have your evening meditation, all that stuff is processed already. You can just kind of be nice and calm and peaceful and sit and have a good meditation. You go to bed, your mind is calm and peaceful. You wake up, you meditate, and you just start the process over and over again. So if you're carrying forth the ember of mindfulness, you're developing a mindfulness practice. And for those of you who are brand new, you can go, I have a whole playlist of retreats. So you can go and look at the videos of my Satipatthana retreat. That's all about developing a mindfulness practice. For those of you who are kind of not familiar with the three characteristics of existence as we've been going over, like anicca, dukkha, anatta, my last retreat last month was literally about those three things. So you can go to those retreat videos and listen to the talks and do the guided meditations there. So the idea is that when we're doing the practice is in whatever we're doing. That includes eating. And so for today and tomorrow, I encourage you to try mindful eating. And what does that actually entail? So it starts now. It starts maybe a half hour from now, 45 minutes from now. It starts maybe when you start to have thoughts and you start to feel, ooh, I'm hungry. You start to feel those feelings of hunger, have those thoughts of, what am I going to have for lunch today? That's when mindfulness of eating starts. You observe the bodily feelings. You observe the thoughts and the mental craving. And then as you're making the food or waiting for the food or whatever, you continue to do that. Right? If you're making the food, you can be observant of the smells that are arising. Right? You can be observant of all the different parts that you're putting together for the food, etc. And then once it's in front of you, you're sitting down, you have your plate or bowl or whatever it is, and you're using your knife and fork or chopsticks or hands or whatever it is. At that point, you can focus on the smell of the food, focus on the anticipation in your mind. Oh, can't wait to eat this. The thoughts and the feelings in your mind that are arising. And then when you go to eat the food, you have your utensil and you pick up some food, you bring it to your mouth and you put it in your mouth. And then at that point, what do we normally do? Think about, maybe you're very, very mindful, you're already experienced mindfulness practitioner, and this is not you, but 99% of people, and you in the past, ate in this way. You had your phone in front of you, or even before cell phones, you had your newspaper. When I was a kid, I had my cereal box in front of me because they had all kinds of games and stuff on the cereal boxes. And you're just shoveling the food in, just like a assembly line, just automatic, just shoveling it in. Or you're talking to your people around you, you're talking and shoveling. There's no mindful understanding. It's just automatic pilot. It's an automated process. You're not thinking, meditating, you're not being mindful at all. And so when you do mindfulness of eating, or any kind of mindfulness, what you're doing is you're taking yourself off autopilot. You are trying to be mindful and clearly aware, clearly comprehending everything that is occurring, experiencing So you have put the food in the mouth, you put the utensil down, and I put the hand down. So don't keep the utensil in the hand. Put the hand down, and especially if you're new, you could say stay. I did this for myself years ago, telling my mom, like telling the dog, stay, don't move. Because what happens is, as you're chewing, the split second you lose mindfulness, hand utensil food done. The automatic pilot comes right back. And so before you're done chewing, you already have another, utensil of food lined up. So we don't want that. We want to have utensil down, hand down, then focus on what is happening here. The feeling of the chewing, the taste that's arising from the chewing, right? And how the taste changes over time, how the taste starts to be lost as the teeth are tearing and crushing and masticating the food into something digestible, right? Observing that whole process. You can observe how the food is changing, how the tongue is like an orchestra conductor, moving things around here and there. And then as it becomes almost like a mush, it starts to be funneled and then it swallows. You're observing that whole process. And then once you swallowed, utensil food in the mouth, hands down, following that process again. Observing that whole process. And then over time, you can start to feel, if you pay attention to your stomach, if you pay attention to maybe some burps or the fullness or whatever, you can start to understand that your stomach is getting full. And what we don't want to do is to overeat. We don't want to, because we have that feel, there's 3% of the stomach left. We're going to have a couple more spoonfuls, right? We're trying to go against that kind of mindset. You have the feeling of you're pretty full, but you're not overdoing it. Well, at that point, stop. There's going to be that greed, that craving. Oh, wait, there's still a few percentage of the stomach. There's still a little bit of space. No, actually, the stomach needs space, air. Right? One of the things that I noticed when I was really starting to pay attention was that when I was probably about 95% full, I would have little burping bubbles, just little bubbles coming up. And that was the stomach expending gas, to make some room in the stomach. And I knew, okay, that's about it. So when I knew when that arose, I'm done. Maybe have some water or a little bit of liquid, and then that's it. And you are done with your eating. So I encourage you to, during this eating process, to be mindful, to apply these techniques, to be aware of the whole experience through both your body and your mind. And then once you do that, you can actually apply that to all your activities, all the chores you have to do, etc. Okay? Don't just drop the ember of mindfulness when you're done eating. Keep it going. Keep it going. And then at 1 o'clock Eastern, after the 2 hours or so of break, you can start your walking meditation. And then we will be back at 2 p.m. Eastern to continue on with the Dhamma talk and guided meditation for the second block. All right, friends. So have a good break, good lunch, and we'll see you in a couple hours at 2 p.m. All right. Have a good break.